Velodyne HGS-15. What a piece of shit. So, I was in my teens and 20s in the 1990s, and at the time Velodyne was like the top end. That was nothing better than that. And one of the things that made them an innovator was that they used an accelerometer on the side of the voice coil to monitor distortion. And so the idea is that if the accelerometer detects distortion, it feeds back to the amplifier to correct the distortion, right? So it's again, it's when it acts nonlinear. And now the way that it may fix that, you would think would be like some sort of DSP, right? But I think it's not as smart as that. Right now I'm trying to research it. I'd love to look up the patent real quick. But the whole thing just stinks of bullshit. This is how I picked it up from the client. This is the motor. And I said, well, I can totally rebuild it for like, I think I quoted him like $300, because that's basically what it would cost for a new driver to replace something as good or powerful. So this thing's good for probably about 1,000 watts. I think probably the amplifier on it might be like a 500 watt amplifier. I got to check it out. So I'm gonna do a little more research. This motor design is it uses the top plate and the bottom plate as a gap. And let me flip it over real quick. Now, does this look exotic? Absolutely. You're like, what is this? This is so strange. So there's another spider here, and I think this is a coil, and I think this is the second gap. This is the first gap, and then there's the other coil. So we can push the back, push it right there. So, but I'm going to cut this out, and basically what we're looking for is a replacement motor that uses two at least 3/4 inch slugs and is a 3-inch voice coil. This one may also count as something, I'm not sure. It had a giant bell that I laughed when he showed it to me. It was meant to shield the subwoofer, and I'm like, who was using CRTs, even in 10 years ago? Like, how old is this subwoofer? And so again, I'm researching it, and I told him, I said, you watch my videos, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I'm probably going to trash this thing. And he's like, yeah, that's good. I want it. And I said, yeah, but if you're going to resell this, I go, you may not want to just show people this. And he's like, okay. He says, but I want to see it. I want to see what makes it special. So here's the thing that reeks of the bullshit is that if it has an accelerometer to correct the distortion, right, to fix the distortion, I think it doesn't do that. I think all it does is back it off. That's all. I think it says, hey, this is too loud, and then backs off the amplifier. And that circuit is actually present in several car amplifiers in the same time period that didn't use accelerometers. They would just notice clipping and they would back it down as a protection mode. I think the 0.2 power class series had that built in. Those were, of course, fan-cooled amplifiers. And when they noticed a little too much heat or a little too much distortion, they would just back it off. And that was a way to save the system rather than just doing some of the amps go into protect, where they just shut down the whole thing. And I think that's bad because especially if something's fan cooled, if you take that fan off even for a second, it's going to get really hot really fast. And that's when devices start falling out of the amplifier board. So, but anyways, back to this. Let me go ahead and cut this spider. Let me show you that. So, and yeah, this is all just a second frame. This is all aluminum. And then there's the motor in there, and then it uses this here. What I was really disappointed about carefully was that this was just glued to the back of the frame. Like a motor this heavy duty, they just, at least they ground the paint off. So they ground the paint off, but then they just epoxied it like that. And then I think the shield was in between and would shield here. And it looks like these little magnets are what connected the circuit of the shield to shield it from a CRT, because otherwise you don't really need shielding if you're using a LCD like that thing. So, and then here's the little, pluggy thing. And he wanted me to transplant the accelerometer. I was like, you really don't need it. And he's like, no, try to do it. And I was like, okay, because I gotta pull this whole thing apart. And so it's got a 1-inch rubber surround, which is nice, but this thing's only good for about 1-inch linear. And so, or max 1-inch peak to peak. And so we're gonna go with the LVS, which is a 2-inch surround. And it's basically the same as the old Orion HTCA from the late 90s. But we're going to recycle this gasket, so that way it's just cosmetic. But I'll cut that off. And then he also wants this paper dust cap. But I want to see if there's, number one, if there's an inner dust cap. And second, we can probably get him something else, maybe something like poly that's just bigger. Looks like a giant areola. But other than that, it's just the standard 4-spoke frame. They didn't use a spider clamp. But let's go ahead and dissect some stuff and then do a little more research. So this thing's a bigger piece of shit than I imagined. Once it dies or you kill it or whatever, you throw it in the trash. That's it. There is no serviceability on this driver. I think this is the HGS-15. 33 millimeter wine height per coil. And then it looks like I'm going to have to put this whole thing in the oven. I mean, I'm not going to do it now because you don't need it to service it. I'm just going to replace the motor. So the only thing we're going to reuse is basically the frame. We're going to clean all that up. The leads were ridiculous. They're super tiny. Again, it's almost like they build it so that you blow it so that you can just throw it in the trash. And again, this was really weak. Where's the other part of it? There it is. It's just little pigtail wires. This is dumb. Dumb. Rich people are getting ripped off. I mean, let me cut this part out. So, but I don't know. I wish I could sell cool stuff to rich people if I could finish, make the finish shiny enough and pretty enough. But my hussies are ugly. My prostitutes are not so great looking. They look horrible. Oh, it's so hilarious. Every time I go to YouTube, YouTube's trying to get me to look at Millie Bobby Brown and then what's the other one? Ariana Grande. And every time I see Millie Bobby Brown, she looks like an 80s like TV prostitute. Not even like a real prostitute, but like a TV prostitute. And my wife's like, don't judge her. A lot of the girls think that that's attractive. And I always think about Dolly Parton when she says, my accountant doesn't realize how much money it costs to look this cheap. So, so hang on, let me cut this cone out. Okay, Sheri's got dinner ready, so I gotta go eat. But here is the accelerometer. Again, I don't know what it's monitoring. I think it's just a temperature sensor. Like, it starts to sense when the voice coil gets hot. I'm gonna read the patent. It's got those stupid air holes, vent holes underneath the thing, which don't do what you think it does. So I was able to salvage so far. I haven't fucked up the cap. So the cone is done. And so then I got to go back, and I'll probably have Sheri pry this off with like a little baby screwdriver. And then just do grind, prep that, and then I want to do like a TC9 Plus motor with dual 1-inch slugs and then like or something like that. I don't think I have anything that's small right now. I just have a ton of big stuff. Sometimes that's how it goes. Sometimes that's how you get upgrades. When I'm late, when I fuck shit up, I try to give you guys upgrades. So let me go eat, and then we'll toy around with this some more. I finally got both of the spiders off. Really, I mean, these are like 25-cent spiders. It's a total ripoff. Again, aluminum, 33 millimeter. Typically what they do when they do this dual gap thing is that the top will be positive and then the bottom will be negative. And so what they do is they go through and wind one coil and then they go back and wind the second coil in reverse. So they work together. like isobaric, but like all in one thing. So not that it makes it any better. So, and we've talked about this. Alexander Jackson has a Memphis LVS that he wants me to rebuild. And I was like, dude, you saw my old video from like fucking 06, 07, where I removed the extra frame and just turned it into a regular 15 or whatever. And he's like, no, this thing's a unicorn. It's like, you guys are so dumb. What's funny is, and I understand his position in that if you're going to have nice equipment, that's what it's for. It's status. The problem is when the company just, suckered you into buying something that isn't what you think it is. So like this thing, like, why do you need 2 coils if the accelerometer is going to correct the distortion? And this thing it's made to move maybe an inch, peak to peak. That's it. And you're limited by the surround. So that's a baby surround. So weak ass cone, by the way, too. It's maybe half a millimeter. It's not even a full millimeter. Weak bullshit. So it looks like my beautiful wife set up a goon sesh with other goons. We're going to just cover our laps with blankets, and then we're all going to jerk off to the same porn together. But tune in tomorrow night for part 2 on this Velodyne HGS.